This week on Scam School, we make counting cards look like child's play. Or maybe it's the child's play we make look like child's play. Whatever.
This episode of Scam School brought to you by Jack Threads.
Here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that if you took out your vital organs and laid them end to end, you would be completely dead from a lack of vital organs? Welcome to Scam School, the only show dedicated to social engineering at the bar and on the street. I'm your host, Brian Brushwood, and this week we finally address one of the most common questions I get. People want to know how they can beat the casino. People want to know how they can cheat, by counting cards. That's exactly what we're going to learn. But seriously, keep your spleen on the inside. Don't do that. Boom.
Yay.
All right, Derek, Matt, Brett. This is good. We got all friends of the show here because we're going to get experimental. One of the things that I've received a lot of emails about recently is people asking to learn how to actually count cards. And counting cards is one of those weird things where it's not illegal. It's not even against the rules. If you are caught counting cards, the worst they can do is walk up and say, "I'm sorry, sir, your skills are not what we're looking for. You're not welcome to play here." That's the soft version. The heavier version is they can say, "Did you hear me? I said you're not welcome here. I just called the cops and you're now trespassing." So technically you could get a little bit dicey, but like in the great list of life events, there are not too many things cooler than getting kicked out of a casino for counting cards, right? So it's a relatively soft thing. Now, having said all that, you know, if you get your ass handed to you and somebody beats it out of you, sorry. So here's the way. We're going to talk about counting cards at Blackjack, all right? First of all, are you guys familiar with basic strategy? What do you guys know about Blackjack?
I know you should assume that the dealer has 10.
Okay, but you know the rules of Blackjack,
Yes.
right? Okay, what do you know?
Like 21 is your best hand.
Yep, all right, you want to get to 21,
Yeah.
sure, the rules of Blackjack.
Ace can be 1
Or 11, yes. These are all the rules for Blackjack. So basic strategy, when you play Blackjack by default, obviously it's skewed in the house's favor. If you play basic strategy, these are a set of, I don't want to say computer modeled because they figured it out long before computers, but it's a set of pat rules that if you follow basic strategy, you will still get beaten by the house, but only a very little bit. It's the closest thing to a fair shake in all of Vegas. The craps and Blackjack are the only table games that don't totally screw you over. In addition to basic strategy, there are certain things called advantage play that take advantage of situational things, your memory of the past development of cards, maybe there are players who are sitting at a certain place where they can occasionally see the whole card under there. With advantage play, depending on the situation, you can actually have an advantage over the house up to 2%, 3%, or in certain situations, even huger if you factor in varying your bet, okay? The way card counting works is that basic strategy is based on the idea that when a card is unknown, it's more likely to be a 10 than, say, a 5, because there are 4 ways to make a 10, right? So you get out a 10, a jack, a queen, a king. So as a result, basic strategy becomes more true whenever there are more 10s in the deck. So counting cards basically means keeping a running count of a certain number that will be indicative of whether there are much more 10s in the deck when you get to the end of it, or very few 10s. And so obviously if there's a lot of 10s, the basic strategy becomes more true and you want to increase your bet. Any questions so far?
No.
So when you're counting cards playing Blackjack, you're sort of playing a larger game over a smaller game. A smaller game is what you decide to do with each individual hand. And that one doesn't take a lot of thought because you're following basic strategy, where there's no decision making to it. With basic strategy, you look at what you get the input, you go by the big chart that says if they have this and you have that, then you gotta go either hit or stand or whatever. So while you're playing that small game, you're playing a bigger game of looking at every card that gets dealt out onto the table. Whether it's your card or the person next to you or the dealer's card, you are assigning each one a value of either plus a point, minus a point, or indifferent of 0 points. So the whole time you start with 0. So when this deck begins, it is all completely unknown. And so you have a default running count of 0. Then for every number that comes out, if it's a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, then you add +1. If you have a 7, 8, or 9, that's a 0, doesn't mean anything. If you have a 10, Jack, Queen, King, or Ace, then that's a -1. So if you think about it, it makes sense. If you have a whole bunch of 3s through 6s, that means you're burning off more and more of the deck, which means that it's richer and richer in 10s, which means basic strategy will be more true as you go forward. If you hit these guys, they're sort of in the middle, it doesn't really affect it one way or the other. And likewise, if you see a whole bunch of 10s, that means there's not so many 10s later on, which means that basic strategy is becoming less true. Any questions so far?
No.
So weirdly, when you're counting cards, you don't affect your play at all. The only thing you affect is the amount that you're betting. So based on the current true count. So you've got your current running count, which is the one number that you're keeping in your head at all times. But how you interpret that depends on how many decks are in the shoe. Some people play single deck blackjack, some people play 2-deck blackjack, some places have 6-deck shoes, and then there are some places that have a continuous shuffler. Those are the places where there is no way to count cards because they're constantly cycling them over and over and over again. So you're going to be establishing this running count the entire time. Take a look at how many decks are left and divide that many decks by what your current running count is, and that'll give you your true count. You with me so far? So let's say if you had a running count of 18 and you look over and it looks like there are 3 decks left in there, then your true count would be what?
6.
That's right. That
Math
was
is
very
hard.
good. That was you're right on the money there, right? So based on the true count tells you how much you should be betting. And the numbers, there's a bunch of different systems out there. For the one we're talking about here, we'll say if your true count is 1, you bet $1. If it's 2 or 3, you bet $2. If it's 4 or 5, you'll bet $3. If it's 6 or 7, you'll bet 4, 8 or 9, 5. Make sense? So you increase your bet based on how many 10s it looks like are still in there. Any questions so far?
No.
Are you a sucker? A mark, a rube? There's a simple test you could take. Look down at yourself. Are you wearing some awesome rockin' street surf or skate wear? Did you pay full price? Because if you did, bad news, bro. Total freaking sucker. That's why there's Jack Threads. Jack Threads has all the most badass brands. We're talking about Kid Robot, Hurley Stussy for 80% off. You will look like a supreme badass with all of your dopest, hippest, grooviest, flyest, sickest, your niftiest clothes, and you'll be paying very little for it. Most importantly, you'll be keeping Scam School in business. So head on over to jackthreads.com/scam because there is a waiting list, but you don't have to get on it. We've got the hookup. We'll sneak you to the front of the line. You will look awesome at 80% off. Jack Threads. All right, so at this point, we know the rules for basic strategy and we know the rules for keeping track of the current true count. So we'll start off with let's say we're just gonna default bet $1 as we go. We're gonna try to play both games simultaneously. So what are we looking at here? What's the current running count?
2.
All right, so this would be what? +1, +2, +3,
Minus one.
That's right, back to 2. Irrelevant, and irrelevant. So yeah, so current rounding count. Okay, so now you're keeping track of that game, but now you got to keep track of what you should do by basic strategy. So now you're playing your hand. So our dealer has a 7 showing, and you've got a 7, which is, what do you want to do?
I would like to hit. Please.
Okay, there we go. So current count is what?
+3.
All right, and what do you want to play for this hand?
I would like to hit one more time, please.
There you go. All right, so now you're at 18.
Okay, I would like to stay, please.
All right, and so current running count is what?
3.
That's right. All right, and dealer has a 7 showing. You've got a 16. So by basic strategy, you would have to hit, which means you bust on there. But again, this is one of those weird things. When you're playing by counting cards, you kind of don't even care that you lost this hand. You're just happy to see the running count go up even higher so that you have advantage play for your next turn. So in this case, you would scoop this up and you'd be out. So the running count is now what?
3.
+4 because you got a 6 right there,
4.
right?
Check.
All right, then finally over here, we got a 15 show. What do you want to do?
Probably hit.
You have to hit because the dealer has a 7. And in that case, it worked out because you have a 20 and the current running count is
+5.
+5, right? And so then finally, so I assume you're going to stop at 20. The dealer shows that he has 16. And then again, hits on a 16, hits 22, he busts, and now the running count is
+6.
+6. All right, so that's the end of that round. That's
a lot of math,
this
Brian.
is astonishing. So let's say you guys jump up to $4 a piece now, okay? So each of you are now betting 4 because you've been keeping track. So in this case, again, we're still playing your individual hands. What do you want to do?
Hit.
You want to hit. So okay, so that's 15, which means you want to
Hit.
and so you bust there.
Unhit.
You want to take it back. So running count is at what?
+8.
That's right. All right.
Hit.
So you're at 17. And
+9.
Stay on that one.
you have 17, and on basic strategy, you always stay on a 17.
Yeah.
All right.
I will hit.
You would hit. So in that case, you bust.
All right.
Go ahead and fold those over there. But the running count is now at
+8.
+8. So in this case, the dealer has a 14, has to hit, goes to 16. Oh yeah, now the 14 takes the count to +9.
+9.
The dealer has to hit, plus at 26. So the running count is now
+9.
+9. Now at this point, you guys were up $1 over the house, but now you're down $3. But the running count is still super high. And now there's even fewer cards left in the deck. We now have less than half a deck, which means that it's even more valuable. So if you wanted to actually divide with a running count of what? We said it was 8 now? 8 or 9?
9.
All right, I'll tell you what, man. If I'm you guys, I would go ahead and run it up to, say, $7 a piece. What do you got?
I'm all in.
$5 a piece. There you go. Everyone's in for $5. So you guys versus the house. We'll see if this works out. I have no idea if it's actually going to work. So in this, now you can see we've got all of these. All right, so what? Keep track of the running count. We're at
+8.
+8. So the running count is at what?
+9.
Right. And you have what?
13.
Against a dealer showing a 4, which means by basic strategy you should
Stay.
because it's most likely that the dealer's going to bust according to basic strategy. So for you,
I would stay.
you would stay, and for you with the 19, you would definitely stay on that. So in this case, and again, remember, basic strategy is predicated on belief that any unknown card is more likely to be a 10, and sure enough, this unknown card is a 10, so she has to hit, and in this case, she busts and goes out, and then that means you guys are now way up over the house.
done. Take that
Now
house.
think about this. If you guys had just continued to play for $1 per hand, you guys would maybe up like be a buck or $2 up. But because you guys are taking advantage of advantage play by paying attention to the run and count, you're able to strike when the iron's hot and make a lot more money. Any questions?
Yes. So being the mediocre mathematician that I am, are there any good ways to keep track? Like clever ways just to know what number you're on?
You can, it's unlikely or it's very special when you get more than +5, right? So in general, if you want to keep one hand under the table and just sort of lift and drop fingers, what I did, theoretically, not that I would ever admit to counting cards, what I did was I had a stack of chips and I would actually just move them over, so slightly over. I would use the chips as counters in front of me to keep track. Whenever I'd see a positive number, I'd move one to this pile and move it back or whatever. It's not the most subtle thing, but again, when you're playing at a $5 table, what are they gonna do? Just ask you. They're not gonna shoot you over $5, I hope.
All right.
But, all right, so what else you got?
So if the dealer is counting with you and noticing the trend in your betting, is there a chance you're going to get kicked out? Or are they going to mix up decks?
I see, and again, I can't speak from experience. I don't think that a lot of dealers are actually keeping a very precise count, but they will pay very close attention to whether or not your bets swing wildly up and down. In fact, of course, the story Bringing Down the House, the movie 21, was all based on people figuring out a way to not obviously wildly increase or decrease your bet. Again, legally, the only thing they can do is say, we don't want you to play at this table anymore. Please leave. Unofficially, they can do some nasty stuff. But again, that would be kind of rad. Now, I know it may look overwhelming at first, but trust me, you're never adding or subtracting more than a single digit at a time. You can definitely handle this. Just practice with a friend and get it down, then go to a casino. And be aware that they may not be happy with you winning with advantage play. Just FYI. Please don't sue us. By the way, we want to hear about your success stories and failure stories, so hit us up at the forums at scamschool.tv, where you can see hundreds, did you hear me? Hundreds of Scam School episodes all waiting there right there for you. And don't forget that the new Scam School book is out. Head on over to scamschoolbook.com to pick up Scam School Book 2. Do you realize that between Scam School Book 1 and 2, you now have hundreds of tricks available on your smartphone, on your iPad, on your iPhone, on your Kindle? It's amazing, dude. We're talking about scores of videos, hours of audio commentary, all of the best tricks that Scam School's ever covered, now available to you in the simplest format possible. Head on over there and make that thing happen. By the way, don't forget to join us next week, because we are going to be unveiling a time capsule that we buried just after the first episode of Scam School. Beer doesn't age well when it's inside an old cigar box, does it? Not even if I wrap duct tape around it?